Hello everyone, welcome back to A Year in the TikTok of the Jock Scientist. Now, something worth noting. One, we have a TikTok that was added that I know I didn't see last time. And then TikToks that were taken away because I can't find the like the one that I left off on last time. So I don't know what happened. It strikes me as very odd that anyone would go back through their content like a year and like remove random shit because someone featured it in a YouTube video. So it might be TikTok's doing because sometimes the algorithm does stupid shit, or it I don't know. I don't know. But just want to put that out there. We're gonna start with this new one. This one we left off on a TikTok that was from May 30th of 2023. This was from May 22nd, but then it jumps right to June. So we'll just go ahead and start with this one.
Afternoon. What can I do?
So the caption here says, me after seeing everyone use this audio to shame themselves for not fitting into last summer's clothes.
I need to buy a gun.
The cycle of conversation around body size is so genuinely exhausting to me. Like whenever the weather starts warming up, suddenly it's I hate how I look in a bathing suit. I can't wear last year's clothes, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not talking about how you can't afford to buy new things. That is a separate conversation entirely, and you know that it is. You will never, never hate your body or yourself into a version that you will like. That's not how she works.
I agree that you can't hate yourself into something that you like. That being said, this isn't necessarily about hating yourself. The conversation about, oh, I'm breaking out last year's summer clothes and I can't fit into any of them. It's that it's all of those incremental like weight increases that you probably had throughout the winter just because you're eating more, you're not moving as much, it's cold outside, you're hunkering down, all that. And so suddenly you are confronted with the result of all of that, and you didn't even realize that was happening. So I think there's that's difficult. It's not even so much that you gained weight, it's that you didn't realize you gained weight until you had gained so much weight that you can't fit into last year's clothes. That hasn't so much happened to me. I have like gained weight over winters where the summer clothes were tight, but not to the point where I couldn't fit in them. But I could see how, I mean, depending on the type of winter that you had, that can happen. So I agree, it's not about hating yourself into someone that you like. I think hating yourself, trying to hate yourself as a form of motivation isn't entirely helpful. I think sitting with the discomfort of where you are is helpful. I think even thinking, hey, I don't like my weight. I don't like the way my hair looks. I don't like XYZ. If it's something that can be changed, like weight, like hair, like your abilities, like your fashion sense, all of that, then it's okay to experience and sit with that discomfort and that dislike of that aspect of yourself as long as you aren't keying it into yourself as a person. And then it just becomes a matter of changing it to something that you do like.
It's not. I have been a size 6, I have been a size 28, and I'm currently right smack in the middle of those sizes, and I have hated myself at each of them. I was socialized into that just like you were before the intervention of media.
I don't think we're necessarily socialized into that, and I'm gonna get to it because I had watched this one before I started this, only this one, but she's gonna make a point here that I need to chime in on.
And our fucked up ways of thinking as adults. Children think that they're awesome. They're constantly in awe of themselves. You are allowed to maintain.
That is not true, though. As someone who works with over 400 students at one school and nearly 700 students at another, that's not true. There's some kids that are definitely like generally in awe of themselves, but kids largely don't think like that in general unless they've like accomplished something that was hard for them. They can definitely feel proud of themselves. Saying that they are in awe of themselves is rarer. It's not that it doesn't happen. It's more frequent than it is in adults, but it's not common among child populations. More often kids, I don't know if I want to say hate themselves, but are frustrated with themselves. And I think this applies to adults too, and it comes from comparison. Even kindergartners will struggle when a peer gets praise and they don't, because the peer just did something as it's part of their personality. Maybe it was a kind gesture, maybe it's just something that the peer does, and um their other peers and adults respond uh positively to it. And then there's always at least a couple of kids that don't understand and can't handle the fact that they aren't always the center of attention, and then that causes them to kind of, I don't know if reflect is the right word, because I don't think kindergarten can really reflect the same way that we would reflect, but kind of there is a little bit of a but why not me? I'm just as good sort of thing. And then eventually when they get into their older grades, there is more reflection. And it's like, so and so can do math and I can't, and that's very frustrating for them. And they try, and if they really just struggle with math, it can lead to tears. It can and it can cause some level of internalizing, why am I not good enough to be good at this? We generally try to like really push that everyone has different strengths. And so just because someone is better at you than something doesn't mean that you yourself are bad. It doesn't mean that you yourself are an issue. You just have to work harder at this particular subject, just like that other kid will have to work harder at a subject that you're good at. And so it's about honoring and recognizing everyone's strengths and weaknesses to kind of prevent that spiraling self-hatred that can come, especially with fourth, fifth grade and into middle school. But to say that kids are in awe of themselves, that hasn't generally been my experience. First, second, third grade still are not in awe of themselves. Kindergarten doesn't really understand what's going on at all, but uh, the even the younger grades, I wouldn't say they are in awe of themselves. Sometimes they do something and they're very proud, and it's great when they're really proud, but to say that they are in awe of themselves feels like a stretch.
In that awe. And I know that it's hard. That's why it's a radical act, because it goes against this weird camaraderie that people find in hating themselves. And you're allowed to opt out of that participation.
I agree. You don't have to like. There is something that can go, especially with toxic friend groups, of talking down about yourself, in order to fit in. Like that can happen, but I think in general, it's not a matter of retaining awe. It's not a matter of being in awe of yourself. I think it's much more akin to that saying, comparison is the thief of joy. Once you stop comparing yourself, and in this way, getting off social media, if that's an issue for you, helps a lot. And that's why some people like are really down on themselves based on what they see on media, because they're seeing the best version of someone. They're seeing a touched up photo, they're seeing XYZ number of things. And they're comparing their real life to the edited fantasy. And that is where the being down on yourself, hating yourself, whatever can come from. So, I don't know. I don't think that it's a big nefarious media diet culture thing like it's being presented at here. I think it's very much the natural habit of humans to compare ourselves to others and compare our realities to the fantasies of another, especially given that fantasies are so much more prevalent on social media and stuff. It's That's more the issue.
What's interesting is that I agree with you, but not
Uh, the comment says, because overweight children aren't healthy as an average child is.
the metrics we are using to define healthy. Because when you say healthy in regards to an overweight child, you mean their body size. I mean their mental health and development. See, because overweight children are at high risk of weight-based stigma, or as you might call it, bullying. And that bullying is not just from their peers or weirdos on the internet. It's also from teachers, authority figures, doctors, parents, and family. And I don't know if you know this, but there are a lot of negative health outcomes from constant exposure to psychological stress. These children that you are talking about are at higher risk of depression, eating disorders, anxiety, poor social and academic performance, memory loss, low physical activity because of that anxiety and stress about their body size, and then guess what? weight gain. They're at more risk of that than type 2 diabetes. Those kids deserve a normal childhood just like their thin peers.
Okay. Couple of different things to touch on there. Saying that they're more at risk of that than type 2 diabetes is acting like we need to treat that rather than address the whole issue across the board, which I don't like. But then also, like, yes, bullying is more likely with overweight children. I completely agree with that. But I would say the bigger issue is when they realize because this is I've worked with some really overweight, morbidly obese children. What I've seen as their biggest frustration, and it kind of breaks my heart, is they see the other kids running during recess and they want to play tag with them, but they can't keep up. They can't keep up. We've had some of these kids come to the library, uh, especially when it's sunny out and the kids are like really running, and they say they say they don't like running, but then they'll also be like the last in line. I'm sure there is a level of, I don't know if it's bullying or just comments from um peers or something that gets them. We try to monitor that as best we can, but I have like library helpers that need to go out. There's this one girl who also helps. She is like very obese, and she purposefully will hang back and wait for them to already leave before she makes her way because, in her own words, she can't move as fast as them. And I think there's an insecurity about moving with that group of kids when she can't keep up. That was my interpretation of my interaction with her. So I'm sure that there is some bullshit happening with her peers that we just haven't had the opportunity to see and correct. But it's also, again, that comparison of these kids can do things I can't. And because they're so young, they don't fully understand why. That's kind of you want to say, overweight kids deserve the same childhood as as their thin peers. I agree. And it's the responsibility of the parents to not feed these children so much because the kids can see the difference in ability level. And from what I've seen, that is the harder thing for them, is not being able to do what the other kids can do.
Talk about how people automatically assume you're going to eat a shit ton just because you're fat.
I'm making my way through this book right now, and it introduced me to the concept of stereotype threat. Stereotype threat is the psychological term coined to describe the experience that many marginalized people have in trying to avoid appearing as a specific stereotype that is associated with whatever their identity may be. A well-known example of this is that I'm not like other girls. Often when somebody is going out of their way to not be perceived as the stereotype, they are doing it as a protective measure against themselves while not understanding that they are contributing to the massive systemic issue that puts them in this situation in the first place. Just a vicious cycle. And I was immediately reminded of what it's like to exist in a big body. But I am healthy, and I exercise regularly, and I eat healthy, and I don't overeat, and I'm social, and I'm married, and I have a great job. The constant appeal for approval to the oppressive state feels safer when it actually continues the harm.
Talk about how people automatically assume you're going to eat a shit ton just because you're fat.
I'm making my way.
So the book that she was talking about was Rage Becomes Her, if you weren't looking at the screen. This was such a heavily laden take that to say that, they're appealing to the oppressive state or whatever the fuck that was. For me, it's very different from, because to a certain extent, I understand and agree with what she's saying, but not in regards to weight. In particular, there have been a couple of different events that have happened that I've watched through different compilations, of Black women like having to be hyper aware of like the angry Black woman stereotype when they're getting into confrontation. So they do remain calm because they don't want to give these people a reason to escalate. That I get. that makes sense, especially since one woman was like calling the police, and she's like, it honestly calling the police on this woman, especially when you've seen the whole thing. It happened in a nail salon, and all that happened was they said they were going to do her nails. They made her wait for a few hours. When she sat down, they started taking the nails off, and they didn't even finish taking the nails off, and the tech got up and left, and they're like, well, we can't help you today. Like, it was some serious bullshit. And she's like, well, can I at least, get the stuff to take my nails off? And they just start screaming at her. And because like the job was even taking the nails off her hands, like the old nails off her hands, was half done. And she's like, I can do this, take this off myself. I just don't want to leave here with half of my nails taken off. And they were cussing her out, and they were calling the police, and she was thankfully recording the whole thing. So in that way, and so like she even said while she was talking about it later that she was purposefully not reacting because she did not want to give them the angry black woman stereotype. And this very much for me in this, because she said, because Mal here says, that contributes to the oppression and the harm. But to me, in that circumstance, that was a matter of self-preservation, because it was clear that the nail salon women were looking for a reason to villainize her more. But anyway, getting back to fat acceptance, though, when we're talking about it in terms of fat acceptance, you're like, oh, I'm not eating a bunch of food and stuff. That's purely for your own insecurities and stuff. No one's forcing, like, yes, people are going to look and people are going to judge, but that's not the same form of oppression as, like, the black woman at the nail salon. The black woman at the nail salon had to behave in a very specific way in order to keep herself safe and to prevent things from escalating. A fat person choosing to eat less in public because she doesn't want to be judged is very different. So it's not lining up. And yes, in response to the original Stitch as well. Yes, when you see a fat person sitting down, you do think that they are going to eat more food, because that's how you get to that weight. Let's not pretend that that's not a thing. Let's not pretend that that's not how that works. You are fat because you eat too much. And that happens. A lot of people eat too much. I still eat too much. I am still working on controlling my portion sizes and controlling my calorie intake, because it's hard. No one's saying that, that's an issue. What we're saying is that don't say that you are just naturally fat and you have no control over it. That's the issue. That's my main issue. Don't fucking lie to me, and don't fucking lie to yourself. And so I don't know. I don't know. There was just, I feel like what she's talking about here in terms of the fat acceptance just doesn't rest well with me. It actually kind of pisses me off, because the general point has some serious validity to it, just not for fat acceptance.
How do we go from this in the 90s to this?
Do y'all ever get jealous of people who have like no critical thought? Like the freedom that you must exist in. Other than like the professional deep throating of the boot that y'all do. Astounding fat phobia and transphobia aside, which we could address at another point.
Can I just say, this is not related to any point she's about to make. It's something I've noticed with the fat acceptance group as a whole, and it kind of pisses me off. They take someone's opinion that they put out there on the internet, and rather than just going in and addressing purely the points that were made, they attack that person's intelligence. So like, don't you just love people that don't have critical thought? And they're calling them like a bootlicker and all sorts of just antagonistic ad hominem attacks that do nothing to further the conversation, but then they'll play victim when channels like mine address their points. What the fuck? What the fuck? I have not attacked anyone as far as my memory goes. I've since the beginning of the channel, I've tried very hard, and maybe there have been one or two times when I have failed. And if that were to ever be pointed out, I would probably put a note on the video that I regret not catching that, and not editing that out, because I've tried very hard with this channel to keep to the points, to keep to their argument, and to not make ad hominem attacks, because it's offensive and it does nothing to further the argument, and honestly, it just makes you look like a fucking asshole.
That's called marketing. It's honestly almost cute how naive you blockheads are and thinking that somehow these corporations have gained morality and now care about political issues and systemic oppression. Like, aw.
No, I don't know anyone that thinks of that. And the main narrative I've had for against that are against ads like that are that they are tired of companies pandering to the PC woke market. Like that's the general that just goes to show you're not understanding the landscape here. Most people that I've seen that are against, like, have strong feelings against ads like that, don't think that companies have just suddenly care about these individuals. Everyone recognizes it as a money making tactic, and some people just don't like it.
No, they understand that they can make money if they market to other populations, and that's what they do. If these corporations actually gave a fuck about people, they would unionize. They would not exploit a worker base and pay their workers $1 a day to make underwear. It's honestly pretty woke of you to stand in the way of a CEO not being able to exploit a political movement for their financial gain.
So, yeah, you're not only is she calling them blockheads and lacking critical thought and all these sorts of insults, but she doesn't seem to understand that people, by and large, when they're like, how do we go from this to this, it is also a denigration of those corporations, not from this perspective, not typically through exploitation the way Mal would view it. It's more like playing to a certain political ideology for brownie points to get people to buy their brand. Most, like, that's how that's viewed. No one thinks that all of a sudden these companies care. Like, it's such a weird pivot that doesn't feel like it's addressing what this person is actually in the original Stitch is actually saying. It went over your head, I think.
Disordered eating masquerading as health crusaders.
I've said it before, and I will say it again and again and again, and the research continues to support this, but the minute that you begin uncoupling...
Okay, wait. I want to take a look at at least the titles of these. Let's see. Effects of cognitive behavior intervention targeting weight stigma. A randomized control trial that was from 2020. Effects of weight neutral approach compared to traditional weight loss approach on behavioral, physical, and psychological health outcomes. A systematic review and meta-analysis. Okay, so that's not like an actual, that's just a meta-analysis. Okay. The second one sounded interesting. I was actually willing to look at it, but if it's just a meta-analysis, then it wasn't a controlled study. Obesity treatment, weight loss versus increasing fitness and physical activity for reducing health risks. Okay, not that one I already have a problem with the way that that's outlined, because obesity treatment, weight loss versus increasing fitness and physical activity, they work in tandem because that's how they're most effective. You are still going to, yes, see benefits from uh, fitness alone in terms of reducing health risks, but the obesity is still going to pose health risks there. Whatever. Anyway, weight neutral intervention, young people with high body mass index, a systematic review. So that one's just a review. So of these, two of these are just reviews of other studies, that it's not that it completely disregards everything, but it's not strong evidence, because most of the time with reviews and meta-analysis, they are kind of putting things that are close. It's like these are similar studies that were kind of looking for this thing that these studies did not account for and did not address per se. And we're trying to find, potential evidence there for a future study that would give more concrete evidence. So those two aren't terribly helpful. Effects of cognitive behavioral intervention targeting weight stigma. That one is more about weight stigma, not necessarily about obesity treatments. So the obesity treatment, weight loss versus increasing fitness and physical activity, also has an issue simply because it's choosing versus weight loss versus physical activity, when generally when we're talking about obesity treatments, it's both at the same time. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish listening to this. I just thought that these were... She put these up on the screen and I had to kind of take a look.
Exercise and nutrition, from how it will change your appearance, is the minute that habit actually becomes sustainable. And that's not me being anti-weight loss or anti-health or whatever dumb shit someone is going to willfully misinterpret my message as. When you...
That's another thing I love about the fat acceptance movement, is they'll willfully misinterpret, willfully misunderstand. I genuinely don't understand how they can view so many people as willfully misinterpreting what they say and not even for a second consider that maybe they just aren't doing great at communicating their points. Or the other possibility is that they are communicating their points just fine. They just don't like how it was taken and they don't like that someone's not on their side. But anyway, sorry, we'll keep listening.
Start shifting your approach to exercise and nutrition as, how is this making me feel, instead of how is this making me look, suddenly it doesn't feel like punishment anymore. Because now you're bringing this organ into the picture, and this is in fact part of being healthy. And despite what the diet industry loves to say, your mental health does not get fixed in a gym or a mirror. And in fact, if your mental health is deteriorating because of the gym, because of the appearance, because of food, you're not healthy. Wellness is often rebranded diet culture.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, you can't completely fix your mental state at the gym. I agree with that. But exercise does help with emotion regulation. It does. Will it cure you of depression? No. But if you are just struggling with being in a certain mental headspace, physical activity helps with that. It does. I guess I can only speak from personal experience, but it helped me a lot with my emotional regulation and my PMDD symptoms. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on.
The is walking enough question truly is worth $1 million. And a lot.
So the comment says, does the cardio work have to be intense to see benefits, or is walking just as helpful?
Of us get in our heads of, I'm not doing enough, I should be doing more, because the fitness industry and fitness influencers approach everybody as though they are an athlete waiting to emerge. It's okay if you're not an athlete, and it's okay if you don't train like one. If you have a triathlete, they are biking, swimming, running, and they are training to support all of those activities regularly. Their body adapts to that level of intense activity quickly because it needs to. Now you take another person who walks their dog for 20 minutes a day, strength trains twice a week, and takes an exercise class on the weekends. They're still being active, but they're not as active as person A, so their body is not going to need all of those adaptations. Person B will still see change, it just won't be as much or as quickly. Where a lot of people get stuck is they are actually a person B, but they try to be a person A. They're not enjoying themselves, the exercise is making them miserable, and they've neglected this key piece to health. That's when it all falls apart and you get stuck in this cycle of having to start over again and again. It's okay to be person B.
Okay, so she didn't entirely answer the question though. So I'm going to just throw some stuff out there. Person B, yes, that's fine, and I'm glad that she acknowledged that you won't progress as quickly or as far as person B. I'm glad that she at least acknowledged that. In terms of does the cardio work have to be intense to see the benefits, or is walking just as helpful? I am not a professional. I am not in the medical field. I can only give you what I pieced together through my own workouts and through my own research when I first started and was looking into like how much you have to exercise to see results, and definitely more intense means faster results and all that. But in terms of like, is just walking enough? Walking can be enough if you are walking fast enough to bring your heart rate up. It seems to be all, when it comes to cardio, it's all about heart rate. So ideally, you would get at least to a heart rate of 120 before it's considered like moderate exercise. And I think over 150, or like, I think there's actually an equation based on your age that will give you like your ideal heart rates. But you have to get your heart rate above a certain threshold for it to be considered like actual cardio and something that would actually benefit you at all. If you are walking so slow and so casually that, for example, another gauge is if you're walking so slow to the point where you can sing, then you're probably not seeing any benefits. It's not really doing anything. If you're walking so fast where you can talk but can't sing, then you're at like a moderate cardio workout. And if you're walking or whatever cardio you're doing so much or so fast to the point where you can't carry a conversation, then that's considered an intense or a vigorous cardio workout. That's just been what I've seen. Again, I'm not a medical professional. It's just something that was a guide that I used. And my Garmin also kind of backed that up with how it gauges my cardio. So just wanted to put that out there.
Ass real fat, I can make it fatter. Wanna see a magic trick? Here. Ass real fat, I can make it fatter. Wanna see a magic trick? Here go a salad. Ass real fat, I can make it fatter. Wanna see a magic trick? Here go a salad. Ass real fat, I can make it fatter. Wanna see a magic trick? Here go a salad. You big fat ass.
Imagine having big fat arms. Yuck. I'm going to back in my day, some of you, because I am a geriatric millennial. I grew up plus size in the 2000s. I was like a size 24 in the year 2004, okay? All I heard from my friends all the time was how terrified they were to potentially look like me. They didn't say that directly, but you know what I mean. But it was at least contained to just our personal interactions and relationship, and it was just my cross to bear. Social media allows us to put all of our thoughts and feelings onto the internet for perfect strangers, the entire public, to consume at any time. So let me speak for the public and for my past self here to tell all of the thin people, oh my God, you're not fat. You are so skinny. You can stop making content like this. Please.
So she starts off with just showing a bunch of people using the same sound for like areas in their body that they feel are getting bigger and they don't like, and all of that stuff. Now, one, it kind of surprises me because I think Mal and I are roughly in the same age range. I grew up as a teen in the aughts myself. And the fear of being fat was very real, at least for me. And I was devastated when I became a size 12. So I can't imagine being a size 24 as a teenager. I'm sure that was very hard. In defense of the friends that talk about, being terrified of being fat, that was part of heroin chic at the time. And to the point where, let's see, Paris Hilton, I know, was like one of the skinniest and like the paragon of like thinness at the time. And then I think, because she had a reality show called, I think it was Simple Life was it Nicole Richie? Was that it? I'm terrible with names. And Nicole was the one that was seen as like the fat one of the two, but she was really thin. So being bigger than Nicole, and Nicole was considered fat at the time, or was at least in the tabloids, was as a 13, 14-year-old. Yes, being bigger than Nicole Richie was a big source of my insecurity as a teenager. So I'm sorry that made you feel bad as a teen, but I think now that you're an adult, I would hope that you would give those teenage girls some grace, given what the expectations were, or at least what the expectations felt like at the time. That being said, now moving on to another part, She's like, you guys can just stop making this. People can kind of make whatever they want. If you don't like it, don't engage with it. If you don't like it, don't watch it. If you don't like it, don't stitch it. I don't understand how you guys can expect everyone to just kind of leave you alone as fat people on the internet when you actively do shit like this.
I'll give you 3 reasons. 1, she's a female. 2, she's not a boy. And 3, and most importantly, she's a girl. I'll give you 3 reasons. 1, she's a female.
So the next time you're working out, I challenge you to breathe how your body needs.
I'm not sure why it's like a collective human experience to feel embarrassed if you are breathing more heavily than the people around you. Including when we're exercising. We're physically exerting ourselves, thus breathing more heavily, and it's embarrassing? Look, when you're physically active, when you're exerting energy, your body responds by increasing your heart rate, increasing your breathing rate, because your muscles need blood flow because it has oxygen to make them do the work. That is your body responding perfectly normal. I hate the term out of shape. So if you are deconditioned, your body is going to respond by turning those systems on a lot faster and harder, regardless of your weight, because it's not used to that level of activity. And you can get used to it regardless of your weight if you do the activity more regularly. Yes, of course, it's more difficult to move 250 pounds than 150 pounds, but at either way, your body adjusts to it. It's very cool.
Okay. Kind of a weird one. I don't really understand why she has such an issue with the term out of shape versus deconditioned. I've never viewed out of shape as particularly like a horrible saying or offensive. I'd like to know why is out of shape offensive now? Why is that is it because of out of what shape? Like, is that what it is? I don't fucking know. But it just seems weird to hone in on that. Anyway, but the insecurity over heavy breathing, I think it's very context dependent. If you are breathing heavily doing a very light form of exercise, like walking around the mall, and no one else is out of breath, then that's where the embarrassment comes from. It's because you stand out, not necessarily because you're breathing heavy. If you're going on a hike with a bunch of people and everyone's out of breath, then there's no real embarrassment around that. It's one of those things where, and this also feels like something that's a little bit more sensitive with those that are overweight and obese, because it's not something that I've thought about much since I was a teenager. I remember being really self-conscious about that as a teenager because I was the biggest kid. And when I look back at pictures, I mean, I was still heavier than the other kids my age, but I was also far more developed at that age. And I was like minimally overweight, not even to like the weight that I had now. I was like 150 pounds or something. And I had developed. I was the first one to get my period. I was the first one to develop boobs. So I think that's part of where I felt like I was fat. But then also I was out of shape compared to the other kids because I didn't like running. I didn't like being outside. I liked playing video games and sitting on the couch all day. That was what I did a lot as a teenager. I was not very active. So whenever we went out and did minimally active things, I would get out of breath a lot faster than a lot of the other kids. So that's where I think the embarrassment comes from, not from breathing heavy, but from sticking out. And perhaps that's more, it's more prevalent with the overweight and obese because they have a lot more to move and it's easier to get out of breath. So we're going to do like one more and then we're going to call it a video.
People are cooking these white people meals and then posting photos of their food creations to social media.
In good conscience, I cannot let the gym bros and almond moms get away with this one. Because the whole point of eating is just to keep yourself alive. This is the shit that someone says when they're like, we just had lunch 6 hours ago. This is the influence of every man that has a bunch of rancid blender bottles rotting in the backseat of their car. That the point of eating is not for enjoyment. I don't know how, and I don't know where or when or why. But I blame Jillian Michaels' influence for this. This is quite literally an eating disorder. I know you guys don't like to admit that to yourselves, but I feel like I can speak to this as an expert since I am white. This is the culture I claim. Casseroles, putting raisins where they have no business. My childhood summers were full of being served bland hockey pucks as I wear my finest Old Navy 4th of July attire. Hey people, taco night? I did that shit last week. This This? Oh, I'm never claiming that. No.
Okay. I remember this whole trend. I thought it was fucking hilarious. Um, but I think she's missing the point because like the casseroles, the barbecue, like hockey puck burgers and shit, those were what you eat at home. We're talking takeout. We're talking food that you take with you. In general, and I say this as a white person myself, white people don't generally know how to season their food very well, so everything is very bland and it's about fast convenience. I didn't get diet culture at all from this whole trend like she's trying to make it. I got like the simplest thing and people don't know how to season their food. As is, typical white person fashion. For like my sister had a boyfriend who she ate at their house a few times and the mother thought bell peppers were spicy. Bell peppers. They never seasoned any of their food, even with salt. Everything was very bland. And of course, the family was as white could be. The trend, I think this was like a Chinese trend. It was funny. It was funny, and whether Mel wants to acknowledge it or not, it was accurate in a lot of ways because the casseroles and stuff take time to prepare. You weren't eating like that every single day. Like sometimes you had how many Americans have like just a ham and cheese sandwich for like with hardly anything on it. Like come on. Come on, don't turn this into like a fat acceptance, fat rhetoric bullshit thing. This was not diet food. This was the Chinese interpretation of an American lunch. And the whole point was to be as bland as fucking possible, which they succeeded. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. I feel like I mean, after that one that was deleted, I feel like there have been many that have been deleted. Let's see, we left off on this one. And yeah, we don't have a lot. Wow. No, no, no. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows left. I know that it was a lot more than that before. So I think so. And like, we're having major jumps in time. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like there was some that was deleted. Am I wrong? Am I crazy? If anyone's been on the Jock Scientist TikTok, have you noticed that? But at this rate, we'll probably be able to finish her within the next two parts. Just finish off her here in the TikTok. So I'm gonna leave it here. I'm gonna leave it here. I don't really have anything much to say in regards to what I've been reading because I've been trying to cut back on my spending on the Tappy Tunes app, so I haven't been reading as many new series. I did though. I did for my week off, spend time learning how to make bags, and I made a tote bag, a shopper bag, and a duffel bag. And they turned out pretty decently, and I'm pretty happy with them. But, yeah, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.